On a busy afternoon in a crowded mall, a black woman was forcefully taken down by a police officer, accused of a crime she didn't commit. She was humiliated, handcuffed, and treated like a criminal. But what that officer didn't know, she was an FBI chief. 4 minutes later, karma struck back hard, and his world crumbled. How did this shocking confrontation unfold? How did she turn the tables and ensure justice was served? Stay tuned to find out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from. Blast off. The Atlantic Square Mall buzzed with life on a busy Sunday afternoon. Families strolled through the brightly lit walkways, hands full of shopping bags, children's laughter ringing through the air. The aroma of fresh brewed coffee from Starbucks mixed with the sweet scent of pastries from a nearby bakery. Neon signs flickered against polished tile floors, reflecting the endless stream of shoppers passing by. Vanessa Harris walked with quiet confidence, her presence commanding yet effortless. Tall, poised, and with a sharp gaze that missed nothing, she moved through the crowd with the ease of someone accustomed to being in control. Dressed in a simple cream-colored trench coat over fitted jeans, she radiated an air of authority without trying. Beside her, 9-year-old Jordan, a bundle of energy with soft curls and bright eyes, bounced along, barely able to contain his excitement. "Look, Aunt Vanessa," Jordan exclaimed, pointing toward an electronics store. "They have the new gaming console. Can we check it out?" Vanessa chuckled, shaking her head. "We can look. But just looking. No bargaining." Jordan grinned and rushed ahead, pulling Vanessa along as they entered the store. Rows of cutting-edge gadgets lined the walls, glowing screens showcasing the latest tech. Jordan's eyes widened with pure joy as he tested out a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Unbeknownst to them, a pair of watchful eyes tracked their every move. Officer Derek Cole, a white cop in his late 30s, leaned against a pillar near the entrance, arms crossed over his uniform. His sharp, narrow gaze never left Vanessa and Jordan. Something about them felt off. A black woman, well-dressed, with a light-skinned kid. Doesn't add up. Could be a kidnapping. Cole's fingers instinctively brushed against his holstered gun as suspicion took root. He had seen cases like this before, or so he thought. Back inside the store, Jordan was still gushing over the latest headphones. "Aunt Vanessa, can I try these?" She smiled. "Go ahead, but don't drop them." At that moment, Cole made his move. Pushing off the pillar, he strode toward them, his posture tense, his mind already made up. A storm was brewing. They just didn't know it yet. Vanessa watched as Jordan excitedly tested the headphones, his little fingers adjusting the settings, while he bobbed his head to an unheard beat. She smiled, enjoying his innocent joy. The world outside her job as an FBI division chief was often harsh, but moments like these, seeing Jordan just be a kid, made it all worth it. However, she wasn't the only one watching. Officer Derek Cole, still leaning near the store entrance, had seen enough. His mind had already twisted the scene into something sinister. A black woman with a well-dressed, light-skinned boy. That didn't sit right with him. His gut told him something was wrong. He had seen this before. These people, pretending to belong, blending in where they didn't. Cole adjusted his duty belt, squared his shoulders, and started moving. His boots echoed against the polished mall floor as he strode toward Vanessa and Jordan with purposeful authority. Vanessa noticed him just as he reached them. "Ma'am," Cole said, his voice cold and authoritative. "Step away from the boy." Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Step away." His hand hovered near his holster. Jordan pulled off the headphones, confusion spreading across his young face. Aunt Vanessa? Vanessa's expression hardened. She recognized the tone, the stance, the barely concealed hostility behind his eyes. She had dealt with men like him before, power-hungry, quick to judge, slow to listen. She lifted her chin. Is there a problem, officer? Cole's eyes darted to Jordan. Sir, are you okay? Do you know this woman? Jordan's brows furrowed. Of course I do. She's my godmother. Vanessa let out a sharp breath, keeping her tone even. There's no need for this. We're just shopping. Cole's eyes narrowed. I need to see some ID. Vanessa crossed her arms. On what grounds? Cole's jaw clenched. He hated when people questioned him, especially people like her. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Jordan looked between them, his small face full of concern. Aunt Vanessa, what's going on? Vanessa placed a reassuring hand on Jordan's shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. Then she turned back to Cole, her patience wearing thin. Officer, I don't know what you think is happening here, but I think, Cole interrupted, you're in possession of a child who might not be yours. A few shoppers had stopped to watch. A couple pulled out their phones. Vanessa inhaled deeply. She knew where this was going. He's my godson, she said firmly. Call his mother. Call anyone you need to. But you're making a mistake. Cole smirked, stepping closer, his frame looming over hers. I don't take orders from you. His hand shot out, gripping Vanessa's arm. Gasps rippled through the store. Jordan yelped. And just like that, things took a dangerous turn. Vanessa barely had time to react before she felt the tight grip of Officer Cole's hand, clamping down on her arm. His fingers dug into her skin with an authority that screamed dominance, not protection. Let go of me, she demanded, her voice sharp and unwavering. Jordan's eyes widened with fear as he instinctively reached for her. Stop! She didn't do anything. Cole didn't even glance at the boy. His focus was locked on Vanessa, his grip tightening, as if daring her to resist. Don't lie to me, he spat. People like you always think you can get away with anything. People like you. The words stung, but Vanessa had heard them before, spoken in different ways, by different voices, always carrying the same underlying hate. She had fought her entire career to rise above it, to stand against men like him. But right now, none of that mattered. A murmur spread through the crowd, gathering near the storefront. Some had their phones raised, recording. Others whispered, their faces mixed with shock and uncertainty. Vanessa gritted her teeth. I told you, I am his godmother. This is a mistake. Cole scoffed, his expression dripping with contempt. The only mistake is thinking you can argue with me. And then, in a move that sent a wave of gasps through the store, he yanked her arm roughly and kicked the back of her knee, forcing her down to the ground. Pain shot up her leg as her knee slammed against the cold tile floor. A shock of humiliation burned through her even deeper than the pain itself. She could hear the whispers growing louder, the disbelief spreading. But no one moved. No one intervened. Cole towered over her, his smirk widening as he pulled out his handcuffs. You're under arrest for resisting a lawful order, he declared. Jordan screamed. No, stop. You're hurting her. Vanessa lifted her head, blinking away the sting of pain. Through the haze of rage bubbling in her chest, she saw the panic on Jordan's face. His small body trembled, his fists clenched helplessly. Cole turned to the boy and pointed a warning finger at him. Stay back, kid. That was the breaking point. Vanessa clenched her jaw and forced herself back up, ignoring the fiery ache in her knee. You have no idea what you're doing, she said, her voice low but seething with fury. Cole laughed, snapping the cuffs open. "I know exactly what I'm doing," he said. "And if you don't get on the ground right now, I'll make sure you regret it." The store had gone eerily silent, except for the sound of Jordan's muffled sobs. Vanessa's heart pounded as she made her next move, a move that would change everything. She reached for her purse. Cole's smirk faltered, his posture stiffening. "Don't even think about it." But Vanessa was already pulling something out. The moment the gold letters of her FBI badge gleamed under the store's bright lights, the entire energy in the room shifted. And for the first time since this began, Officer Derek Cole looked afraid. The room went silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the store's speakers playing a pop song that no one was paying attention to anymore. The crowd that had gathered stood frozen, their phones still recording. But now the energy had shifted. In Vanessa's hand, the gold letters of her FBI badge shimmered under the store's fluorescent lights. The words, "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent in Charge," gleamed, undeniable and unchallenged. Cole's smirk disappeared in an instant. His hand, which had been so confident on his cuffs, suddenly hesitated mid-air. His face lost its color as his brain struggled to catch up with what was happening. "You just assaulted a federal agent," Vanessa said, her voice steady but laced with fire. She rose to her feet, towering over him now, not just in stature, but in power. "And that's only the beginning of your problems." Cole took a step back, his mind racing. His training told him to react, to keep control of the situation. But there was no control left. The crowd had seen everything. The cameras had captured it all. You're lying," Cole stammered. But his voice cracked. Vanessa didn't even blink. She held her badge up for the cameras, ensuring that every single person recording got a clear view of it. "Do I look like I'm lying?" she asked. Jordan, still sniffling, wiped his face and clutched Vanessa's coat. "Aunt Vanessa." She turned to him, her voice softening for the first time since this nightmare began. "It's okay, baby," she reassured him. "He can't hurt us anymore." Cole was spiraling. He turned to the store employees, looking for support. He turned to the onlookers, desperate for someone, anyone, to back him up. But all he saw were blank stares. Judgment, the quiet horror of people realizing they had just witnessed a man with a badge abuse his power in real time. The whispers started growing louder. "She's FBI. He's done for. He needs to be fired right now. Is he gonna get arrested?" Vanessa crossed her arms, her expression cold. "Well, Officer Cole," she said, making sure to emphasize his title, as if it was a joke. "Are you going to keep resisting, or do I need to place you under arrest for assaulting a federal officer?" Cole swallowed hard. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His world was falling apart in slow motion. Before he could even think of responding, the mall security and local police arrived, pushing through the crowd. One officer, Lieutenant Brandon Lewis, a tall black man with a stern face, stepped forward. His eyes immediately flickered to Vanessa, then to Cole, who was still standing like a deer caught in headlights. "What the hell is going on here?" Lewis demanded, his sharp gaze bouncing between the two. Vanessa turned slightly, her badge still raised. "Lieutenant Lewis, glad you're here. Your officer just assaulted a federal agent, used unnecessary force, and attempted an unlawful arrest, all while being recorded by at least a dozen witnesses." Lewis's face hardened as he turned to Cole. "Is that true?" Cole's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked around wildly, but he was alone now. A younger officer standing behind Lewis cleared his throat. "Sir, we We got multiple calls about an altercation, and, there are a lot of videos. Cole realized it then. He was done. Lewis exhaled, his disappointment visible. Officer Cole, hand over your weapon and badge. Cole's eyes snapped to him. Wait, you can't be serious. I am damn serious. Lewis cut him off. You laid hands on an FBI agent and an innocent civilian based on nothing but your own prejudices. You've embarrassed this department. You're suspended immediately. The murmur in the crowd exploded into cheers. Cole shook his head, stepping back. This is bullshit. Vanessa, now standing tall, leaned in just enough for only Cole to hear. You think this is the worst of it? She whispered. Your career is over, and you have no idea what's coming next. At that moment, two other officers stepped forward and unlatched Cole's duty belt, taking his gun and radio. As the weight of what was happening crashed down on him, Cole finally looked truly afraid. The tables had turned, and karma had arrived, right on time. Cole stood there frozen as his gun and badge were stripped from him. The weight of his downfall hit him like a freight train. Just minutes ago, he had been in control, commanding, aggressive, untouchable. Now he was the one being publicly humiliated, his authority crumbling under the weight of his own reckless actions. The crowd was no longer just whispering. They were cheering. That's what he gets. Fire him now. He thought he could get away with it. Phones were still recording, capturing every second of his disgrace. The video would spread like wildfire. His name, his face, his downfall, immortalized on the internet. Vanessa stood tall, brushing the dust off her coat. Her knee ached from where he had forced her down, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her in pain. She turned to Lieutenant Lewis. I want him in custody, she said, voice firm. I want full charges filed. Lewis nodded. I understand, Agent Harris. We'll take it from here. Cole's head snapped toward him. Wait, you're actually gonna arrest me? Lewis narrowed his eyes. You assaulted a federal agent. Do you understand how serious that is? Cole scoffed, desperation creeping into his voice. I didn't know she was FBI. Vanessa let out a humorless laugh. Oh, so that's your defense? That if I had just been some regular black woman, it would have been okay? Cole's mouth opened, then closed. He had no answer. Jordan, still clutching Vanessa's sleeve, looked up at her. Is he going to jail? Vanessa crouched to his level, smoothing a hand over his curls. Justice takes time, baby. But I promise you, he's not walking away from this. Behind her, Lewis gestured to the other officers. Cuff him, Cole snapped. You can't do this. This is all being blown out of proportion. Vanessa tilted her head. That's funny. Didn't you say the same thing before you forced me to my knees? Click. The sound of handcuffs locking around Cole's wrists rang through the store. For the first time since this all began, he knew what it felt like to be powerless. Inside the police station, Vanessa sat across from Derek Cole in a small interrogation room. The cold metal table between them reflected the harsh fluorescent lighting. Cole was no longer in uniform. His badge and gun had been stripped from him, his authority reduced to nothing. He slumped in his chair, his wrists still cuffed, but his eyes burned with resentment. He had gone from being the one giving orders to the one waiting for his fate. Vanessa, on the other hand, sat upright, completely composed. She had been here before, not as a victim, but as an interrogator. She knew exactly how this worked. And now, the tables had turned. Do you have any idea what you've done? She asked, her voice calm, but edged with steel. Cole scoffed, shaking his head. This is ridiculous. You're blowing this out of proportion. Vanessa slid a thick file folder across the table. Oh, am I? Cole hesitated before flipping it open. The color drained from his face as he scanned the documents inside. Internal complaints, excessive force reports, racial profiling accusations. Some were dismissed, others quietly buried. Vanessa watched as realization dawned on him. This wasn't just about today. This was about his entire career. You think this is just about what happened at the mall, she continued. This is about every single person you've abused your power against, every person you've harassed. And now, it's all coming out. Cole clenched his jaw. You don't know what it's like, he muttered. Vanessa leaned forward. Oh, trust me, I do. I know what it's like to be doubted, to be judged before you even open your mouth. The difference between us, I fought against it. You embraced it. The door swung open, and Lieutenant Lewis stepped inside, a folder in hand. We've got a problem, Lewis said, placing another file in front of Vanessa. It's bigger than we thought. More officers, more cover-ups. Cole's fingers twitched as he sat back. He was no longer just a disgraced cop. He was the first domino in a much bigger scandal. Vanessa locked eyes with him. This isn't just your downfall, Cole. It's the beginning of something much bigger. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Rows of spectators, journalists, and fellow officers filled the benches, their eyes locked onto the man sitting at the defense table. Derek Cole, once an officer who strutted through the streets with unchecked power, now sat slouched in a gray suit, his hands clenched together, stripped of his badge, his authority, and his confidence. Across the room, Vanessa Harris sat tall, poised, and composed. She had faced criminals before, but watching a corrupt cop face the consequences of his own actions carried a different weight. The judge adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. In the matter of Officer Derek Cole versus the state, this court finds the defendant guilty on multiple counts, including excessive use of force, unlawful detainment, and abuse of power. A collective exhale swept through the courtroom, followed by whispers of approval. Vanessa didn't celebrate. She simply watched Cole's reaction. He barely moved, but his eyes flickered with something raw, fear. Not just for the sentencing, but for what came next. Before the judge could proceed, Cole suddenly leaned toward his lawyer and whispered urgently. The attorney hesitated before standing. Your Honor, my client would like to make a statement. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. Cole exhaled sharply, gripping the edges of the table. He turned his head, meeting Vanessa's gaze for the first time since that day in the mall. I messed up, he admitted, his voice strained. I didn't think. I just acted, and I can't take that back. The courtroom fell into a tense silence. Vanessa studied him carefully. Was this genuine regret, or just a desperate attempt to soften his sentence? You're right, she finally said, her voice even. You can't take it back. But people like me, people you target, we don't get the luxury of excuses. Cole swallowed hard, looking away. The weight of reality had finally settled in. The judge sighed and straightened. Sentencing will be determined in a later hearing. Court adjourned. As the gavel struck, Vanessa stood up, unshaken, victorious, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been silenced. Justice had finally been served. The evening air outside the courthouse was crisp, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and murmured conversations. Vanessa Harris stepped onto the steps, the weight of the day still lingering in her chest. Around her, journalists shouted questions, cameras flashed, and microphones were shoved toward her. Agent Harris, how do you feel about the guilty verdict? Do you think this case will bring real change? She stopped, scanning the crowd before answering. "This was never just about me," she said, her voice firm but calm. "This is about accountability, about making sure bad cops don't get to hide behind a badge. Derek Cole is just one man, but the system that protected him, that's what needs to change." The reporters fired more questions, but Vanessa didn't linger. There was still more work to be done. As she reached her car, a small voice called out, "Aunt Vanessa." She turned just in time for Jordan to rush into her arms, hugging her tightly. His mother, Vanessa's best friend, stood nearby, watching with relieved eyes. "Are you okay?" Jordan asked, looking up at her. Vanessa knelt down, brushing his curls from his forehead. "I'm better than okay," she said with a small smile. "And you were so brave through all of this. I'm proud of you." Jordan hesitated, then whispered, "That cop, he's not gonna hurt anyone else, right?" Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "No, sweetheart, not anymore." As she stood up, she took one last glance at the courthouse behind her. The fight wasn't over, but today, justice had won. And that was only the beginning. This story isn't just about one corrupt cop or one act of injustice. It's about a larger system that allows abuse of power to exist. It serves as a wake-up call for all of us to stay vigilant, to speak out when we see wrongdoing, and to demand accountability from those in positions of power. One of the biggest takeaways is the importance of recording and reporting incidents of misconduct. Without video evidence and public outcry, Vanessa's story might have been twisted to favor the officer. This reminds us to use our voices, our cameras, and our platforms to expose the truth. It also highlights the bias and discrimination that still exist in society. People like Vanessa, despite their accomplishments, are still unfairly judged based on appearance. This is why we must challenge our own biases and stand up against racial profiling whenever we see it. Finally, this story is about resilience and justice. Vanessa didn't just fight for herself. She fought for every person who has been silenced or mistreated. If we want real change, we must hold people accountable, educate ourselves on our rights, and never stop pushing for a fairer and more just society. Today's story is more than just about one act of injustice. It's a reminder that power must be held accountable and that standing up for what's right comes with risks. Vanessa fought back, not just for herself, but for everyone who has been silenced. Now, imagine yourself in her position. If you were wrongly accused and mistreated like Vanessa, what would you do? Would you fight back until justice is served? 1. Or would you stay silent to avoid making things worse? 2. Drop 1 or 2 in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep these important conversations going. Blast off!